a serious man? More like a serious podcast discussing the philosophy of this movie. A Serious Man by the Coen brothers. That was really bad.
It was too long. It was just too long. You started it and I was like, this could be good, and then you kept going, and I was like,
I have no idea if you're gonna include all this or
no. We are. Just keep going. Just keep going.
Okay. Hi everybody. We're talking about welcome to Not Just Any Book Club, Book Ends, the show not about books. Because right now we are talking about a movie. And this month is all about Kafka. And while Kafka had some movie adaptations of his works, we decided to kind of broaden the horizons here in this case and have a movie that was Kafkaesque. And Kafkaesque, I'm pretty sure Pierce may have a better grasp on what Kafkaesque is, but basically it's like trying to understand the world and then and getting into absurd situations, and basically the comedy comes from misery, which is what this movie is all about. Because what can be more Kafkaesque than trying to understand what the world is going on, or what the world is all about?
I think modern interpretations of Kafkaesque have had the comedy come from misery, but I think Kafkaesque is essentially, if you're going to break it down to its most simple explanation, which I've watched a couple videos of people trying to explain like the word Kafkaesque, and it just means a lot of different things to a lot of different people because it's basically all encompassing for what Kafka wrote about. If you want to break it down to its like smallest possible, the lowest common denominator, it would be trying to understand a society that does, or a system that doesn't really make sense, and the absurdity is what makes it funny,
which is what kind of happened in this movie.
Yes.
By the way, yeah, I am Justin, and with me is Pierce. Whoever the host and the co-host, we can discuss that later. But
wait,
are we both hosts?
No, co-host. Just you can both be co-hosts. That's what co-host means. It means also host.
It's very Kafkaesque of you.
Oh my god.
Like yeah. Where was I? Or just introducing ourselves. Next week, or 2 weeks from now,
Next week,
Next week, we'll be discussing just Kafka himself, the works. But in the meantime, we're going to be discussing A Serious Man, which right now we will be getting to the plot summary, but maybe a little bit more difficult to do because like kind of nothing happens with this movie. But in summary, this movie, it opens in a prologue, which may or may not be relevant to what's going on. Basically, a man invites a Dybbuk inside his home, and then the wife stabs the Dybbuk. Could be a Dybbuk, could be not be.
A Dybbuk is essentially like a Jewish folklore demon thing.
Also, we're not Jewish.
So anything that we say about Judaism, take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
If it's wrong.
Yeah. But either way, the Dybbuk, the maybe Dybbuk, walks out, and the woman supposes that there's a curse, and then we cut to quote unquote 1967, where Larry Gopnik is just teaching physics. He's a physics professor talking about Schrodinger's cat, and it opens up on him getting an X-ray, and then his son just listening in class. And then he talks to someone approaches him and then asks to change the grade, but then the guy, Larry just says, no, you can't do that. You can't understand the world without understanding the math. And then he goes home, and then his wife tells him that, hey, we need a get.
I think the most important part of that is where he says actions have consequences.
Actions have consequences.
Yeah, he says actions have moral consequences. Yeah. Always.
There's a lot of little lines that like could encompass the entire theme of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. His wife tells him that he wants to get a divorce so he can marry their mutual friend named Cy Abelman. Cy Abelman.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, it's basically a get, which is technically in line with the religion. And yeah, that and they basically evict him out of his own house. And meanwhile, the son is just trying to avoid Fagel for owing money for the marijuana because his radio gets taken away. So after all that, Larry he says that he moves out. He's also facing tenure. He applies for tenure and looks like he's gonna get it, and then they kind of deny him that. So that's another thing that just happens, which makes
They
temptation.
don't deny him. They don't deny him it. He gets it.
Oh, he gets him at the end, but like
Yeah, he gets it. So the we'll talk about this. We'll talk about why this happens later. But basically, like he's there's some things that are coming up, like they're getting sent anonymous letters, and his like the head of his, I think it's the head of his university, keeps
yeah,
coming in, and he's like, by the way, this won't affect your decision at all because
mm,
they're anonymous. So, but and I'm not supposed to be telling you this, but we are getting letters. So if there's anything that you can put forward, that'd be great.
yeah,
And then he gets it at the end anyway, even though he doesn't do anything about that,
yeah.
which we'll talk about that later.
And meanwhile, while all this is happening, Larry's brother Arthur tries to fill out a notebook with a map to the universe or map to the probability of the universe or something like that.
Mhm.
Doesn't matter. I don't know.
And it apparently works. Like he's able to like cheat at cards using it, and he
Yeah.
gets into like trouble.
Yep. So after all this, after being tempted with the money and all that, he moves to a nearby motel, and he doesn't have basically any money to his name now. And he basically applies to get a divorce attorney, and then more stuff happens. He basically just starts to get confused. He loses a bit of his faith. He goes to the Jewish faith for consultation. He consults two rabbis who are comically unhelpful. One just tells him, "Hey," one of them is absent, so another one takes his place, and it's just comically unhelpful, saying, "Look at the parking lot. Look at the perspective. You need to use perspective." And the second one just tells a parable about a dentist with teeth that may or may not be relevant. We'll get into that later. And she's like, "What does that even mean? What is it supposed to do?" And he just kind of shrugs it off. And then Larry and Cy are involved in car crashes. Not they're separate, but Cy dies, and Larry is unharmed. And Larry pays for Cy's funeral, and at the funeral, Cy's eulogized as a serious man. Quote. And then he also Larry looks upon his neighbor and is seduced by her, goes to her house, smokes a J, and they may or may not be fornicating. It was all a dream. Who knows? And then he goes to Danny's bar mitzvah, which is the son, and he's super high the entire thing. And after all that, Danny, the son, gets his radio back, and the third rabbi, which he was denied, which Larry was denied, tells him, just quotes somebody to love, when the truth is found to be lies, and all the hope within you dies when you find somebody to love, and just returns it to him and says, "Be a good boy, be a good boy." And Larry's life starts to turn around. He gets his tenure. He basically is reunited with his wife. His son is accepted into the synagogue, and then he looks at the mail and sees that there's 3,000. There's a bill from 3,000 that is $3,000, and well, he really can't pay that off. So he looks at the temptation again. He looks at the grade, changes it from an F to a C minus, and then he immediately gets a call from the doctor telling him we should look at these X-rays in person. And a tornado happens and could possibly kill his son. The end.
Yeah.
What does that all mean? I don't know.
Okay. So I think we should go bit by bit and talk about what it all means, and come back to the prologue at the end, because the
Yeah.
prologue does have a meaning.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. I think it's a little bit more than just like placing a curse on the family.
Yes,
It's
that's a
way too
theory
simple.
that some people had, and I saw that online, and I was like that's not right.
Yeah.
It's just supposed to be thematic, and the reason it's a Jewish family is not because they're like his ancestors. That's way too random of a detail to leave out. Um,
Well, I'm pretty sure, like it's somewhere in the background. Correct me if I'm wrong. Well, I don't know if anybody's gonna correct us, but there's like a photo of his ancestor in the background, in one of the houses. I think it's like a blink and you miss a thing, but yeah, maybe.
mm,
I'm not
mm.
entirely discounting it, but I don't think that's the point of the scene.
No, 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 no. But yeah. So basically, we went over this in summary. We kind of open on Larry just living his life, teaching his class,
Uh,
and then he finds out, and then bad things start happening to him. Uh, the student who wanted him to change his grade tries to bribe him, and then he starts getting like he doesn't do anything about it. He just like holds on to the money.
hmm.
He doesn't try and go to like the school, probably because he doesn't want to actually see this kid expelled. He just wants to fail him and that to be it. Um he doesn't try and like give he doesn't really give the money back. Like he's not like forcing them to take it. He doesn't get rid of the money. He
He just
doesn't
says it was
take it.
left by accident, right, or
Yeah,
something like that.
and he just like leaves it in his desk. He doesn't do
Mhm.
anything with it. He doesn't like I said, he doesn't take it to the dean. He doesn't try and give back. He barely tries to give it back. He kind of does. He doesn't get rid of it. He doesn't use it himself. Like there's nothing there. Uh and then
It's
his
fucked.
wife is trying to get the divorce. Um and He didn't you said in the summary that he got back with his wife he's reconnected with his wife, which
I
in a way is right, but I don't think he got back with his wife, like, he's not living there still,
Yeah,
I
it
don't
cuts off
think.
before anything gets certain. I'm pretty sure that she apologized to him in
Yeah,
a way.
which is a step forward in their
Yeah,
relationship because they'll always have the kids, right? But
yeah,
I don't think it's implied or said outright that he's, like, back with her. Um, but anyhow, as for their relationship, he is, um he is constantly getting pushed around by her and her like new lover, and he doesn't really do anything about it except for like get angry a couple of times, but even then he doesn't use that to do anything. um and then even when Sai is killed in that car accident, he doesn't take that as an opportunity to get back with his wife if he wants to,
mm,
which it seems like he does want to, but he doesn't take that opportunity to even try to do anything with that. um and then what's the other thing? I feel like there was one other thing I was going to say, but in those two, I feel like those are the two main lines of events that really like happen to Larry, and those are both the story there is kind of in action, right? The reason I said when you were talking about the bribe that uh the most important part is the fact that he says every action has a moral consequence
yeah,
immediately. Um, it the I feel like a huge theme of the movie is that he's right, but also inaction also has a moral
yeah,
consequence, and that's something that he seems to understand because his brother. There's that scene where his brother is
yeah,
like breaking down Arthur, and he's like, "You can't blame everything on Hashem. You can't blame everything on God." Um, like sometimes we have to take a little bit of responsibility for ourselves. Uh, so he seems to understand this as fact,
yeah.
and yet he's totally inactive in all of his problems.
Yeah, I see, and I do think that him being a physics professor does have significance because physics is about understanding the world, and I
Mhm.
know that he says in the scene that you can't understand basically Clive Parker, the Asian guy that bribed him money. It was like I understand the stories, and it's like the stories are things that are used to simplify the math. You can't understand physics without the math. So I'm thinking that that's kind of like a parallel between understanding what God wants, and then using the Bible to understand, um, in a way, try to understand what God is all about.
Or in this case, the Torah.
The Torah, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's also that. Um, Speaking of which, the Mentaculus or whatever
Oh
Arthur is
yeah,
doing.
the probability. I feel like it's brought up too often to not mean anything, but I didn't really understand what they were trying to say with it, to be honest.
I'm thinking that's also a parallel to the Torah slash Bible. But basically, it's giving him the answers, but he is continually getting punished for it, for
Mhm.
succeeding, and actually putting that to good use. And basically, and it's also built up to be just absolutely nothing. um, but I think that's basically what it's all about. That's what you basically can't understand the world, without being punished for it. And I think that's kind of like a microcosm between Larry and Arthur, because Larry's not trying to. Well, Larry's trying to understand the world and still gets punished for it. Arthur's trying to put his understanding to good use and is like thrown in jail. And I believe he gets arrested for sodomy or something like that as well. Which
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He never gets thrown in jail, but the cops show up at Larry's house during Cy's funeral, and they're like, "Hey, is Arthur there? We're not arresting him this time, but tell him to stop playing cards."
yeah,
Um, and then the cops show back up at his house with Arthur in handcuffs, and they basically go like, um, it was like indecency and suspected sodomy or something
yeah,
like that. Um, so
whatever they. It's, and speaking about parallels to Larry, Danny, I think was the kid's name.
mhm.
What do you think that he kind of represents in this entire tale? Because I know that he's like, obviously his problems are not as grand as Larry, who's having his own midlife crisis. But Danny, basically just keeps on running away from Fagel. He basically just wants to get his radio back, and basically, and he also wants to keep on watching F Troop. And just keeps on complaining about the TV satellite thing. I feel like
he's
that.
he's basically like I feel like Danny is Larry is in action, and Danny is like running away from action almost.
That's what Fagel represents. I'm assuming
Yeah,
because he's faceless,
right. Until the very last scene
and the beginning of the movie as well,
and the beginning. Yeah,
kind of bookending the movie. Hey,
right.
that's the show.
um but yeah, Danny is supposed to be. I think he's supposed to be like running away from action, as opposed to he never leaves the house at like after school, opposed to his sister who always wants to leave the house.
Hmm,
Um, she's like always washing her hair or going out, basically.
that's
Uh,
interesting.
and I don't know exactly what his sister is supposed to represent, but I'm pretty sure that's supposed to foil against him,
Yeah.
specifically.
Um. Yeah. Well, that is a good point. And speaking of which, I feel like Danny is used to make kind of like poke fun or satirize religion in general, because like as he's reciting the Torah in Yiddish, he's doing it phonetically. I am pretty sure, like, he starts reciting the words from like, what is that, a
He's
record
doing it
player?
he's doing it from memory, right?
Yeah.
It's that's that I actually laughed at that scene out loud because I finally realized what he was doing the whole movie when he
Yeah.
would go into his room and then play a record for 5 seconds and then copy it. I was like, "What does he do? Like, does he just like singing?" Like, because it's shown in the very beginning of the movie that he's not really paying attention in his Hebrew class.
Yeah.
And so I was like, and I obviously don't know that much about Judaism, so I didn't know that that was part of the bar mitzvah, was reciting like a
Yeah.
Jewish,
Passage.
yeah, whatever it is. So it got to that point, and he was just staring at the paper, and I was like, "What is he doing?" And then he started singing that, and I recognized it from him memorizing it in his
Hmm.
room, and I thought that was really funny.
Yep. And culminates kind of at the end, where he's basically just high off marijuana and just basically just high during the
Yeah.
bar mitzvah. So I think it's trying to. I don't think the movie's anti-Semitic. We're just gonna say because this
Well,
movie's
the
been
Coen
accused of it.
brothers are the Coen
Yeah,
brothers are Jewish. I'm pretty sure.
yeah, and the movie is full of Jewish people, and I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure some of them are practicing Jews or Jewish people. I don't know if I'm pretty sure, but I think that's the acceptable term, Jewish people. So,
Yes.
yeah,
Well,
I don't.
I think I mean, I know I have never heard a Jewish person get upset for someone using the term Jew, but I know there is like a little bit like some people are uncomfortable saying that because it's tied to some pretty bad
Yeah.
stuff. But yeah,
Well,
but so I don't know. We could just say Jewish people the whole time if
yeah,
you'd rather. That's fine.
yeah,
But yeah, no, the I'm sure they're calling it anti-Semitic because this movie does come off fairly anti-organized religion.
yeah.
But I think that's what it is. It's um the biggest I think Kafkaesque part of this movie is in its takedown, its critique of organized religion.
Yeah,
Um where people are going to, you're going to these people and that's all they are is people for answers, and
the rabbis referring to.
they have, yeah, the rabbis, they have just as many answers as you do because they are also people, right? They might
Yeah,
have more or less life experience, but they're gonna give you some kind of advice that might be good in some situations, but in the end they're just people. They're not infallible because they're connected to this organized religion.
yeah, yeah. I think you're hitting the nail on the head. I think also the get or the divorce is also used as a critique because it basically just sends his entire life running, basically turning to shambles. And I don't know if divorce is part of Christianity, but they say the get a lot, which I'm assuming it means part of Judaism. Like there's an official term for it as well.
Yes.
So
So she wants not only a legal divorce, but a divorce in the church, which is the
yeah,
get. I
so
don't believe Christianity has that. I
yeah, it was
don't think.
outlawed for a while.
Mhm.
Yeah, so yeah, they somehow also sneak in a critique, and obviously with Danny basically just being high, basically slipping through the cracks and getting confirmed as a Jewish man.
Yeah.
So there's all that. And fun fact, this basically how the Coen brothers like write a movie is they take one scene and they just write around it. Them, Danny getting high at a bar mitzvah was the first scene they wrote, and they just wrote something around that. So
That's
don't know.
funny because that's not Danny. I mean, Danny does have some focus, but he's not like Larry is clearly the focus of the movie. So that's
Yeah,
funny.
yeah. They're very they're not weird, but they're very, very secretive about what they mean in movies. Basically, all their movies are very Kafkaesque.
Mhm.
Basically, just random events happen to them, to the protagonist. So we could have chosen a lot more Coen Brothers movies. Um, and basically, these men are very unsuspecting, or these people are very unsuspecting. They try to make understanding of it, and basically just get punished for trying to dig in deeper. Big Lebowski, especially, is just that him trying to dig deeper into the mystery. No one understands what's going on, and the movie just ends, kind of like here. So yeah, it's very. This is like a through line throughout the Coen Brothers filmography.
Yeah.
So
I will say real quick something that I just thought of. What do you think? So we've talked about how Danny and Larry are kind of like two different uh
foibles.
the part of the central part of their character is that they are two different critiques of action and
Mhm.
inaction, right? Um why do you think, I like, obviously in like the Jewish faith, there's a reason why Danny gets to go see the head rabbi and Larry doesn't. But why in the movie do you think that is? I feel like there's definitely a reason behind it.
And I'm pretty sure the third rabbi, he's just said to just officiate just like the big ceremonies. I think weddings. He definitely said bar mitzvahs. I'm assuming weddings as well. So I'm assuming he just didn't want anything to do with it. I guess that's another point for critiquing the religion or organized religion.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, that's my take on it. He just basically doesn't want to help Larry. He could have all the answers. He just chooses not to even try. Perhaps it's too hard, too difficult, or he just doesn't care. Um, it's very ambiguous as what he means. But he is actually helpful towards Danny when he is given the radio. He gives the radio back, and he quotes, "When the truth is found to be lies, all the joy within you dies. Then what? These are words of the airplane. Be a good boy." Kind of gives him advice like that.
Yeah.
Um, which I'm assuming that's kind of what the I wrote down that quote specifically as like kind of surmises what I believe the point of the movie to be is like you won't be able to understand God, but just be a good boy. That's what I think, or
Just
that's what
like
I think the
just
rabbi.
try and be a good person, basically.
Yeah,
Take action to be a good person.
but again, the movie kind of goes against that because Larry is a good guy, and he when he
But
takes
but he's not taking action though. Like he
mm,
never he I don't he never really does anything.
yeah,
Is and when he does do stuff, it's usually not very good. Like he clearly goes over to see that neighbor woman with the intention of
yeah,
of of
cheating, seducing, yeah,
cheating basically. In the religion, it would be considered cheating because he's not divorced yet.
yeah,
Um, even if they are separated. Uh, but yeah, like so I think I actually agree with you that if you had to break this movie down to like a one sentence theme, that probably would be it. Take action to be a good
yeah,
person. And that brings us back to the prologue, I think. Um because I think one interpretation that I've seen that I actually really like and agree with is that um the two characters there, the husband and the wife, along with the not the Dybbuk, the other two, um, not the possible Dybbuk. Um, they uh, they're both kind of they're obviously foils of each other, right? The husband is kind of he doesn't believe in superstition and
mhm,
he wants to be very careful and going to the themes of the movie, he's kind of all about inaction. Um, like he just even when his wife brings up the fact that she thinks this guy's already dead, so this must be a Dybbuk or a demon of some
mhm,
kind. Um, he's just he kind of believes her, but also then is just like, well, we'll just see what happens. Basically, like he doesn't say anything to the guy when he walks in, and he's not going to kick him out. He just continues on like nothing
yeah,
happens. And then the wife, she sticks to it. She accuses the man. The man laughs at her, of course,
mhm,
as regardless of if you're a Dybbuk or not. I feel like that's the thing that you would do. Because you're calling me a demon out of where? Out of nowhere.
yeah,
Um and she just keeps going and then eventually she stabs him. And at first, no blood comes out, and she's like, "See, it's a Dybbuk." And then blood starts coming out, and he leaves. And the husband is like, "Well, why would you do that? We're gonna be ruined. Like people will find the body in the morning." And she's like, "Better." I forget the exact quote. It's like, "Evil is better out there," or something along those
something like that, yeah,
lines. Yeah. Um, and it kind of is coming back to the action and inaction would have consequences, right?
mhm,
If this guy is a Dybbuk, then the inaction would be the terrible thing to do. But it becomes clear that he's not a Dybbuk, right? Because he
mhm,
starts bleeding. That's the
yeah,
evidence against her whole theory. Um, and then so the action instead is going to have the consequence, um, which I think is pretty interesting, and I'm not sure exactly totally what it means. Um,
I can just like imagine like watching this for the first time in theater and just like going like what
When I
what's
first
going.
turned it on, I was like, "Did I turn on the wrong movie?"
Yeah, that's what I
Like
thought too. And yeah, like I still have no idea. I mean, you could try to guess. Again, the Coen brothers said they just threw it in there because like, oh, we need an attention grabber. Which like, do you really believe that? I am
No,
pretty
I
sure.
don't, cause,
Yeah,
cause, cause it's they're so clearly they are foiled, and the only thing we know about them is that the husband is more inactive and the wife is more active in their, like, action
yeah.
like, their decision making.
But
Um
I think there was a quote at the beginning that goes, "Receive with simplicity everything that happens to you," and I believe that is like setting the theme for that, at least for that prologue. Um,
mhm,
because when once the Devitt gets stabbed, he starts laughing. So he's receiving with simplicity everything that's happening with him. He's just like he's leaving it simple and being called a Dybbuk right after, showing no remorse. Um, they basically the Dybbuk just walks off and laughs it off, and I'm pretty sure that's the film's attempt at saying you're not going to understand what's going on, so be a good person anyways. Basically, if
yeah,
anything good happens to you, that's out of your own will, like the tenure stuff. And if anything bad happens to you, that's also out of your control. You can't control what happens to you. You can only control how you react to it.
yeah.
And you can try to make sense of it.
Well,
That's up to you.
I think it also seems like I think a part of the point of the prologue is also it kind of is also in the ending where, um, like I said, there's the inaction might be morally bad or the action might be morally bad depending on the situation in the prologue. And then in the ending, um, he does the bad thing and seems to be taking the money by changing the kid's grade in the grade book to a C
Yeah,
minus instead of an F. And he immediately faces a moral consequence
yeah,
in
or
his
two.
son possibly getting harmed. Yeah, in his son possibly getting harmed and possibly, I
Yeah,
would guess, cancer,
yeah,
possibly.
but it's disproportionate. Like he doesn't really deserve that.
No,
Like
no,
yeah,
and that's the thing. Like, um, yeah, it is. I guess it is disproportionate even to the prologue,
yeah.
but
Which again, you're not supposed to
which
understand
which
God.
sorry, which if the wife at the beginning is right and that man is actually like dead, like she heard from her
Mhm.
family or family friend that that guy's is really dead, then she had every reason to believe that
Yeah,
that something was wrong. And maybe
yeah.
her action was a little over the top, but
And okay, I'm saying this in the context of the movie.
Mhm,
If we're going with the interpretation that like this is a curse, it shows like maybe God could be wrathful slash vengeful because the
mhm,
prologue kind of sets the stage for that, where others are being punished for the actions that are not of your own will, that are basically they punish your ancestors, immediate family. In case of Larry, and I think acquaintances with Cy Abelman, which yeah, I mean I would assume like all this stuff is happening to him as like a curse. Which we didn't even discuss the Book of Job. Are you familiar with the Book of Job?
yes, I'm fairly familiar with the Book of Job.
Yeah. Well, basically for the listeners, it's basically God and the devil have a bet, and they basically take the most moral man, who is the most devout man to God, who also has the most wealth, I believe, named Job, and God just continues to punish him over and over. I think he takes all his riches. I think he also takes his family, and Job just starts to ask God, "Why are you doing this to me?" And God appears to him in a whirlwind, which I mean, I'm guessing the film is also doing it through a tornado.
Mhm.
Um, I'm guessing that's something. I don't know if that's God revealing himself to Larry in some
It
way.
probably is because there's so many parallels to the Book of
Yeah,
Job that it wouldn't make sense if it wasn't, I don't think.
yeah. I'm assuming that's not accidental. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, So basically, this movie is just asking the question: is God disproportionately cruel, incomprehensible? Is he just wrathful towards Larry just for no reason? I don't know. The movie poses a lot of questions, but not a lot of answers.
Yeah. The question, I think the question is first, like, is God wrathful? Is he willing to punish people on earth for is he willing to punish people on earth? And then the question after that is, um what exactly would Larry have done to deserve it? And then you get into the action in action thing.
Yeah, which I don't know. And there are a couple of other like little things in this movie. Like what is it when Larry's called by the Capitol Records thing, Capitol Records house, asking because they imposed a bill on him that he didn't ask for. And I think Danny is suggested to have bought it, but like it's never brought up again. But he says that I don't want Santana Abraxas, which Santana Abraxas or Santana was a band, and Abraxas was an album they made, and Abraxas is the agnostic term for God. And since this Capitol House Records Club was seen as a scam at the time, he's basically just saying, I reject God. So that's something. That's one of those little things.
Yeah, and also in that scene and other scenes, there's he's constantly saying things like "I didn't do anything" or like "We
Yeah.
didn't do anything."
What is happening? I
Yeah.
didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, did you think the rabbis meant anything?
Well,
Let's start with the first one.
The
Like,
first one, I actually think I don't know if he actually meant anything outside of like I think that they were clearly individual critiques of organized religion.
mhm.
And the first one, I think on a surface level is pretty easy. It's just like you're going to people who have less life experience than you and asking them for life advice.
Mhm.
Um, I feel like on a surface level that's really clear. And then on a deeper level, I felt like the parking lot meant something, but I wasn't sure what.
He says look for perspective, which is
Yeah.
brought up again at the end with Arthur, at least in the dream, complaining, "You have everything, I've got nothing." To Larry is like, "You've got a family, you've got kids, and I have nothing." So,
And meanwhile, we've been thinking the whole movie, like, why is everything getting taken
yeah,
away from Larry? Yeah.
yeah, um, yeah. That's my takeaway from it. I mean, the scene out of context just seems useless, but like as a whole, it's like you can pinpoint that one scene and just see that maybe the Coen brothers do mean something here. Maybe you do need to change your perspective.
Right. Um, and then the second rabbi,
Keith.
yeah, I honestly don't know about that one.
I,
Like, because then maybe the point is that he didn't give good advice to either of them. Like, that's definitely part of the point. Like, I feel like, oh, he was leading
yeah,
the dentist, if that story is real, to inaction. He was leading him to not act on this thing that was clearly like
miracle
important.
or
If
like
you see, yeah, if you see the word help written on the back of somebody's teeth in a language that they don't speak because it was in Hebrew and the guy wasn't Jewish, that's kind of important. You should
yeah,
do something for sure. And the guy was like, he was basically like, "Oh, just don't worry about it. Just like try and be a better person in Hashem. Like just
yeah,
live your life." And it's like, no, don't. No, that's
yeah.
something's happening. Something is wrong with that guy, and you need to like do something.
But they never explained what was wrong with him. So
Right, because and the dentist never found out, according to the rabbi.
yeah,
So
so I don't know. I yeah, that's what I'm thinking. The second one's about just like don't try to understand anything, live a good life. Because he did eventually like forget about it, like the dentist, and he
yeah,
lived a good life afterwards. That's what I'm assuming. But I'm also thinking that like live your life in ignorance and ignores God's word. which I don't know. I'm not supportive of that either. I don't think Rabbi would tell him that, but I
Like
don't
it's like it. I think this movie is clearly like to me the message, the personal message, not the message about religion, because there is clearly a message about religion, but the personal message for people, for like you to go like live your life with, is that inaction has just as much consequence as action itself.
know.
And so for the second rabbi to lead that dentist to not act, uh I I feel like that, along with the messaging of the rest of the movie, it adds in another critique about organized religion,
Mhm.
as everything with these rabbis does. Um, and then it also like, because this is like I just freaked out about it. This is a serious thing. Like if you see the word help written on the inside of somebody's teeth, call the police. Do anything. Do anything. Anything is
Exactly.
better than like going on with your life, basically.
I guess headcanon is that something bad happened.
Yeah.
Had a heart attack right after. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, I think the consequence of his inaction is not just whatever was happening with that guy kept going on, but also now Larry is getting this weird random story that has no like meaning to it from this rabbi. And so it's also an unintended consequence that's harming the advice that Larry is being given.
Also, I mean, this kind of did just occur to me. With in action. Um, Larry does impose a lot of morality in his head, and he's more active in his own mind because we have that entire scene with him trying to escape with Arthur, and then he gets shot
Mhm.
by a Jew hunter. I feel like that's him, like his own head, just saying, um, like you can't, don't try to defy anything, just
Oh,
go
he's
with the
trying to
flow.
convince himself to stay inactive, right? Because
Yeah,
he's like, because the actions that he does in his dreams are things that are either good or that he would like to do, and his dreams are just they're convincing him not to do them. Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah. He's imposing his own morality, I
Mhm.
guess. Um, yeah. um, I we said so much of a lot of things, but like I don't know if any of this just makes any sense to
Yeah,
anybody.
and the thing is, like, I don't know how to really string it all together. It's a lot
Yeah,
like the movie itself. Like, it's just hard to string all of the points together into a um, cohesive thing, which kind of makes sense because the whole point is that
it's Kafkaesque.
yeah, it's Kafkaesque. They're critiquing basically every system that they
Yeah.
talk about in the movie: organized religion, the university, the like home life,
Yeah, the
everything.
suburban home life.
Right.
Yeah, and what could be more Kafkaesque than trying to understand the world?
Yeah, and it not making sense.
Yeah. I mean, I do you want to end here? Did you like the movie at least?
Yes, it was very good. I liked it a
Good.
lot, actually.
You might want to check out the other Coen brothers.
Yeah,
Stuff.
I've seen The Big Lebowski, and I liked that as well. I think I looked at a list recently, and I've seen a few of them, but
Yeah.
I don't remember which ones off the top of my head.
I'm trying to remember what other things are Kafka. I mean, yeah, that movie's Kafkaesque. No Country for Old Men. Just I love that movie because um the plot is really interesting, and then there's a lot of subtext beneath it, and they run parallel to each other. That you can try to understand what every part means, and like you still also have a really good movie and have a lot of interesting subtext, which is a theme throughout most of the movies. So yeah, also really like the book.
Yep.
Um, yeah, I also really like this movie. It supposes some very interesting ideas. It's not the strongest movie, but it is probably the most important movie. Like just like being able to say all this stuff, and in the comedy. I don't think many films really touch this ground in a way that actually does it like this. Plus Roger Deakins, who is a cinematographer. I was surprised that he shot this film, but it makes sense because the color palette's all great and all that. That's just me gushing about film. Anyways, I hope you learned something. If you didn't, check us
Yeah,
out on Twitter.
this movie was really good. Go watch it if none of that made sense to you, and hopefully
Yeah,
it will by the end.
it won't make
Um,
any sense.
it probably won't still, but what we said might make a little more sense to you
Except the
because you'll
mystery.
yeah. Um, okay, so please tune in next week for our full discussion on Kafka. Um,
A lot of good things to say
a
about
lot
that.
of good things to say about Kafka. Justin over here read the trial as well as
Some other stuff. I
you're
read The
gonna read
Judgment,
some.
and I'm
Okay,
probably gonna read some other short stories.
yeah. And then I read so far in the penal colony, the judgment, the metamorphosis, and I'm part of the way through the trial. I might read one more short story. I'm undecided.
You can tell that
Um,
he's really enjoying Kafka.
I've been really enjoying Kafka, and then Luke will also be there. He's reading the metamorphosis, I believe.
Bug Book.
Um, Bug book.
Yeah, I've also read the
Yeah,
Metamorphosis too, so
I
I got
really like when I tell people about how I've been reading Kafka recently, and they're like, "Who's that?" And I'm like, "Oh, he wrote the book about the guy turning into the giant cockroach." And everybody's like, "Oh yeah, that guy.
yeah.
I know that book." Um, no, not a lot of them have read it, but they know what it is. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Uh yeah.
Anyway, check us out on Twitter at not
At
just
Not Just Any
any
Pod
pod. There you'll find information on this podcast as well as our other one, not just any RPG.
and memes.
Um,
Oh yeah, and also
and
join us
memes.
join us at Not Just an RPG on Twitch, twitch.tv/Not Just an RPG. We will stream not this Friday, but next Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern
Mhm.
time.
Yes.
You can check us out there as we are in the 15th episode of SNL
Something like
Archetypes.
that. Yeah.
A lot of content. And
Yep.
also, that's our other podcast.
Yes. And last thing, if you enjoyed, please give us a like, a follow, a rating, a
A
good
good
rating,
one.
hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, whatever it is on whatever platform you're listening on. And yeah, I think that's it.
Goodbye, Prometheus.